The next speaker is Margaret McQuiston. Go ahead, Margaret.
Hello, Margaret. Margaret,
hello. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Chair Croft. My name is Margaret McQuiston. I am a member of the Calgary Alliance for the Common Good's Truth and Reconciliation Research Action Team. For those who don't know, the Calgary Alliance for the Common Good is a nonpartisan, nonprofit alliance of congregations, unions, schools, and community groups representing more than 37,000 Calgarians. So thank you for this opportunity to address the Commission again today on behalf of the Calgary Alliance. Our last presentation to you was at your June meeting. We hope that you had some kind of a break despite all of your ongoing work. As we have explained to the Commission in the past, we are trying to improve the relationship which the Calgary Police Service has with Indigenous people in the city by advocating for the hiring of an Indigenous liaison officer in each of its 8 districts. I was listening with interest to the anti-racism report, which was presented earlier, and we are very pleased to hear that a 3rd position will be added to the Indigenous liaison team. We thank the police service for listening to us and for taking this first step. I would also like to say that I found the Illumina presentation incredibly informative. Although I'm not surprised at any of the findings, it was still very interesting information. There was lots of information in that report, which certainly supports the work that we are advocating. And I particularly resonated with some of the comments made by Gabrielle Lindstrom. So in my statement today, I would like to follow up with you on what has occurred since my last statement to you on June 29th and provide some recommendations to the Commission for consideration. On June 30th, members of our Truth and Reconciliation Action Team had a productive meeting with Deputy Chief Katie McClellan, Police Superintendent Asif Rashid, and Constable Justin Thompson. At that meeting, the CPS agreed to help facilitate ways for our Indigenous organizer, Suzanne Cario-Zeus, to potentially join the Indigenous Advisory Council, and for our elder, Doreen Healy, to potentially join the Elders Advisory Council, which is currently being created. Since then, Suzanne has been asked to attend a meeting of the Indigenous Advisory Council, and it will be up to the council to decide if she will become an official member. And Elder Doreen has received an invitation to the Elders Council. We are encouraged that the CPS also committed to meeting with us regularly. It is through continued dialogue that we can make meaningful progress towards a better Calgary. We do not have another meeting officially in the calendar. However, we have recently heard from Superintendent Rashid and Deputy Chief McClellan, and it is expected that a meeting will be set for early October. Previously, we had heard that the CPS had been advised by the Indigenous Advisory Council that due to the racism and discrimination within the CPS, additional Indigenous liaison officers should not be hired. They said this because they felt that the CPS was not far enough along its reconciliation path, and it is not a safe or supportive workplace for such officers to be effective. At our next meeting with the CPS, we are hoping to get further details on what the CPS is doing to address the advice of the Indigenous Advisory Council and to move more quickly in building and implementing their Indigenous roadmap. We believe that the anti-racism work must continue in parallel with adding to the number of Indigenous liaison officers. We say this because more Indigenous liaison officers are needed on the ground sooner than later to build the relationships that are needed to lessen the fear which exists within the Indigenous community when interacting with the CPS. This cannot wait until the anti-racism strategy is completed. Based on the anti-racism presentation we heard earlier, there's lots of good work being done to address racism, but we all know that this is in the early stages and it is a long-term endeavor. This problem needs to be addressed urgently by using all avenues that are available. Also, to get around the racism and discrimination issue, we have heard that the CPS is considering training non-Indigenous officers to fill the functions of Indigenous liaison officer. This begs the question to me, was this new position that was announced earlier this afternoon filled by an Indigenous person? We know that non-Indigenous officers do not have the lived experience necessary to connect effectively with Indigenous people who interact with the police. There is no way to teach lived experience. Indigenous people have the right to interact with those that look like them and who understand the full impact of systemic racism, the legacy of the Indian residential schools, and the importance of their wisdom and healing traditions. This is consistent with the Illumina research we just heard about, which talked about the need for more diversity. Although we are encouraged that the CPS is willing to meet with us on a regular basis and that we will have the opportunity to raise our concerns directly with them, we believe that the Commission also has a role to play in advancing the hiring of Indigenous liaison officers. According to your mandate, the Police Commission is responsible for the budget of the CPS. Therefore, we recommend that the Commission ensure resources are available to address the racism and discrimination within CPS on an expedited basis and provide the budget to hire Indigenous liaison officers for each of the 8 districts. You are also responsible to ensure sufficient persons are employed by the service to carry out the functions of the service. We would argue that the CPS does not have sufficient persons to build the relationships that are needed between the CPS and the Indigenous community. We believe that the hiring of Indigenous liaison officers in each district will go a long way in supporting the anti-racism, equity, diversity, and inclusion work necessary for the anti-racism strategy to be meaningful. We would like to keep you informed of the outcome of our meetings with the CPS and hope that you will allow us to do so through this monthly public forum. I thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for joining us once again and for your comments and for your continued engagement in these issues. We appreciate your participation and your contributions.